Hi guys, this video is as short as I could make it. Review of A Song of Ice and Fire by George R. R. Martin. This video is spoiler free and all of my opinions are going to be solely based upon what I've read. As I have not watched the show, and from what I've heard is that in the later seasons the storyline is quite different. As of now, there are 5 volumes of A Song of Ice and Fire and 2 more are supposed to come out. The last volume came out in 2011 and it's already been 10 years. I don't know what George R. R. Martin is doing. I even sent him a tweet about this. So anyways, I got this box set in 2019. It took me about 3 to 4 months to read the complete series, although I did it in a 2-year span with huge breaks. But the breaks did not really affect my reading because when I read the next part, the story from the previous books came back to me. I did face trouble with 2 or 3 characters, so I just googled their history and it was all fine. So I read A Game of Thrones and A Clash of Kings somewhere around in May to June 2019. Then I read Storm of Swords in like 4 to 5 days in 2020. Then I had also read a few pages of Feast for Crows, but then I had to put it down. Then I read the remaining of the Feast for Crows and A Dance with Dragons in June 2021 in less than about a month. I really love this box set because it has a nice blue, grey, white theme to it. All of the covers also have a sense of aesthetic to them and they depict like the significant locations in their respective books. Like these are way nicer than the previous covers. Perks of buying book set is that you get small little things like this. This is a map of Westeros and the Free Cities. It is a poster actually, and I have used this multiple times while reading to navigate through the characters' location. Although this map is not complete, there is more to the east side, but it suffices because most of the story takes place in here. Now, first of all, a huge hats off to George R. R. Martin for writing this because never in my wildest dream I could fathom, writing such a brilliant piece of work. In short, I would say A Song of Ice and Fire is an epic, extremely detailed fantasy with magical creatures and grand royal politics. That is probably the shortest way to sum it up. Martin is such a descriptive writer that you might just think sometimes that World of Ice and Fire actually existed in about 250 AC because there's this whole world, there's are different countries or continents. Each place has its own culture, language, different types of people, different food. There's even description of respective climates and none of it is same. There are even different religions and I wouldn't say the religions are copied. It's like a complete new imagination. It might be inspired by the real life, but it's not the same. There are people who are worshipping trees. There are people who have created this religion by the name of faith. They have their own 7 gods. There are people who are worshipping fire. There are people who are worshipping horses and so on. And when I say descriptive, I really mean it because Martin describes suppose there's just character who has entered, he will tell you what's the person's height, what is their face structure, what is their skin color, what is their hairstyle, what is their hair color, what are they wearing, and oh my god, clothes are described in so much unnecessary detail. You get to know what color the breeches are, what color the jerkin is, what it is, what's the material, what's the style, what it is lined with, what it is sewed with. So sometimes it's just too much, but I think that's what makes this sort of special. There's also too much description of food. If somebody is having a meal, then you get to know what color was the pork, how crisp it was, the magnitude of its greasiness, then what were the complementary fruits or drinks, then what you drank to wash it down. So all of it. Sometimes it's actually just too much. Now for like the first book, Game of Thrones is probably the best and the most fast-paced. Since like all of the characters are being introduced and the storyline is just opening, new threads are opening, a lot of stuff is happening, and this is really engrossing. And I would not recommend reading this series when you don't have sufficient amount of time, because it is too long, too complicated, too engrossing, and you just want to read it when you have sufficient time, as it requires attention. Then comes Clash of Kings. Clash of Kings and Feast for Crows are probably the most boring ones. I actually had a hard time reading Clash of Kings because there are many waste chapters which describe characters crossing this Dothraki Sea, and there's repetitive, monotonous description of everyday life and what they are doing while they're crossing the Dothraki Sea. Storm of Swords was really amazing. As I said, I read it in about 4 or 5 days. I could not put it down. Most of the chapters were page turning. Then Feast for Crows was again very boring. I wanted to leave it in between so bad. And I would say probably this is the least liked book, as there are like in the Game of Thrones is written in point of views of different characters. Now there are only a few characters in the beginning, but from Feast for Crows there are many different characters, and there are also minor characters which have like 2 or 3 chapters, but still they do have some chapters, while in Game of Thrones there was only point of views of major characters. Then Dance with the Dragons was also really nice. It had a lot of different chapters of minor characters, like probably 2 or 3 as I said, and again a lot of stuff happening in the Dance of Dragons as well. Feast for Crows and Clash of Kings were extremely slow. It gets disgusting sometimes with the details, like if a person is dying, then Martin tells you like which organ is coming out, what it looks like, what's its color, how bad it smells and all that. So in between it does get really disgusting. This book has a lot of woman oppression, objectifying, thrashing, vulgar language, incest, some pretty disturbing stuff as well, like flaying of skins, and glorification of men being the superior race, and some bad stuff as well. Like there are a few really prominent female characters, but still the other stuff is there. So if you are a person who would not want to read all of this, then you should not read this, because there's a lot of patriarchy and misogyny as well in here. But if you are a person who likes fantasy, who likes mythical creatures, who likes plot twists, then you should definitely read this, because there's a lot of it in here. And once I remember, the chapter ended so amazingly that I just could not wait to continue reading. I skipped about 300 pages to read the next chapter of that character, and I do not regret it. There are some really mind-messing plot twists in here. So there are tons of different characters in here, and the central place would probably be Westeros, around which the story and the characters revolve. Like all the characters from Westeros are divided into different houses. There are big major houses, and there are minor houses who have their liege houses and all that. So you might just have a hard time remembering all the different characters, because there are hundreds of them. But don't worry, there is an appendix at the end of each book, and the appendix itself is about 70 pages long, I think. This is just the appendix of characters. There's also a teeny tiny description of each house in the end of the appendix as well. Now, this is not a kid's book. It doesn't tell you good prevails over bad always. It tells you the opposite, actually, that sometimes world is cruel and unfair, and you have to sometimes bend or defy the rules to get around. And even with families, how people say families are the supreme best and they always want the best for you. These books show that it is not so in all the cases. And there's this quote about men: most were only men, the best of them overcame their flaws, did their duty, and died with their swords in their hands. The worst were the ones who played the Game of Thrones. and this is so evident in the series. You know, sometimes being good just doesn't help to survive. So if you are also a person who is into good stuff, I would say you should not read this at all, because there's a lot of glorification of bad things in here. In all, I would probably rate the complete series a 4 out of 5. Not 5, because as I said, some parts are really slow and unnecessary, and I for one was okay with reading the extreme details, but I did not really enjoy it. Like, it was just waste of chapters for me. So I would rate this a 4, like 4 as well, because it's really amazing to create such a vast detailed world with amazing plot twists throughout. So 4 it is. If you have any questions about the series or you want any spoilers, I would gladly give them to you in the comment section. Thank you so much for watching. Remember, winter has